And to tell us more about this, Dr. Ko Myong-hyun, a research fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies, joins us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so today, North Korea is holding its plenary session of its Workers' Party, and this meeting comes after Trump's pick for his new U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, recently visited Pyongyang to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. So at this point, what could have been discussed at this meeting, and what can we expect from it?
Well, North Korea's Workers' Party's plenary session is a platform for the North Korea's ruling party to discuss about policy doctrine, as well as to either to reaffirm or change the policy guidance for the party. So this is an opportunity, I believe, for Kim Jong-un to report to the senior and the lay members of the party about the recent developments in the inter-Korean dialogue, as well as the relationship between North Korea and the United States in regards to the denuclearization negotiations. So, in the process of reporting about the recent developments, Kim is likely to describe what the policy stance is on the part of North Korea regarding denuclearization, and is going to explain this in more concrete terms, because from the North Korea's point of view, this is an opportunity to signal to the United States what kind of a negotiations position North Korea will have ahead of the summit.
So like you said, eyes are on what kind of policies may be out in regards to North Korea's denuclearization, as well as we're talking about denuclearization. We know that back in the 2013, during the same meeting, Kim Jong-un's signature policy, that Byongjin policy on nuclear and economic development, was adopted. So, any changes that we can expect on that policy?
Well, hopefully there will be some changes to the policy doctrine, because Byongjin, which means dual pursuit of nuclear and economic development, it's in direct contradiction to the idea of denuclearization.
Right.
You cannot have nuclear development on one hand, have denuclearization on the other hand. So definitely North Korea is right now under, no pressure, but under demands it's required to change its policy doctrine. We'd like to see what kind of language North Korea is going to use from now on. We really don't know how North Korea is going to reconcile its recent drive for nuclear development and the sudden change of position towards peace settlement with the United States and South Korea. So it's going to be quite creative in a way for North Korea to reconcile these two realities. So very much looking forward to hearing what North Koreans say about this.
All right, then what are the chances that we might see North Korea officially talk about denuclearization, and how perhaps come up with some policies that says that North Korea is moving toward a denuclearization?
Well, they'll have to make an announcement about that, because this is this is an important time for them. There will be inter-Korean summit and the U.S. DPRK summit following this plenary session. So if they're really serious about negotiation with South Korea and the United States, then they should really lay out what kind of negotiation position they have. So the key issue here is clearly about denuclearization. We know that North Korea has so far denied the idea of giving up nuclear weapons.
Right.
But on the other hand, the most important condition on the part of the United States is complete denuclearization of North Korea. So one indicator of where North Korea is heading right now is the outcome of the meeting between Pompeo and Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Apparently the meeting went well. And then we know that because the U.S. DPRK summit is going ahead. So definitely it looks like North Korea has somehow accepted some of the concept of a complete denuclearization that the United States has been pushing forward so far.
Then what are the chances that we might see North Korea officially talk about the upcoming summit with President Trump?
Well, I think the most likely thing to happen at the plenary session would be for Kim Jong-un to update senior members and the lay members of the party about the recent developments in U.S.-DPRK relations. Whether Kim Jong-un is going to make a surprising announcement about the upcoming U.S.-DPRK summit, I'm a little bit doubtful about that, because we don't know yet where and when the summit is going to take place between Trump and Kim Jong-un.
Right.
We don't know anything about that yet. Apparently, that's being discussed intensely between the two sides. And given the culture in Pyongyang, and the culture in Washington as well, it's likely that we are going to hear from the Washington side first, probably with one of the leaks to the major newspapers in the United States.
Okay,
that's my
so
expectation.
you think it's going to come out of the U.S. first?
Yeah, that's
decided.
Well, that's my guess. Yes.
All right. Now let's shift our focus a little bit. We heard earlier in our newscast that a direct communication hotline that would allow President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to talk to each other directly is being hooked up today. So what kind of meaning does this serve for the two Koreas?
Well, first of all, this serves a symbolic meaning. This is not the first time that there will be a hotline established between the high level hotline between North Korea and South Korea. It's more of a restoration of the hotline. So in that sense, it's a symbolic message for the rest of the world that the inter-Korean relation has been restored to the full extent that we used to see 10 years ago during the height of the Sunshine Policy days. So that's one. But then on the more practical matters, I believe the South Korea and North Korea can use the hotline to come up with a very quick discussion about what kind of policy stance that each side will take regarding denuclearization and about the possibility of accidental tension taking place in the Korean Peninsula. So in that sense, this really diminished gap in communication between the two Koreas.
So we don't know the exact date that the two leaders will actually talk to one another through this hotline. I mean, we've heard reports today that it might come as early as this weekend. But what's your expectations on that, and what would the two talk about once they talk to each other?
Well, unlike the US DPRK summit, we pretty much know about the agenda for the Inter-Korean summit because there's been a very active discussion between the two sides about the agenda items. So there will be no, essentially a strong need for the two leaders to pick up the phone and talk to each other to settle some contentious item on the agenda.
Right.
So if there's if the phone call takes place this weekend, then it's going to be more about this very symbolic event where two leaders talk to each other. Probably they're going to greet each other and then express their possible expectation about the Inter-Korean summit.
All right. Now, there are growing expectations over this establishment of a peace treaty between the two Koreas. So, and President Moon actually said yesterday that North Korea hasn't really put forth any preconditions that the U.S. would not accept. And this is pretty big, what he said here, and saying because we thought that one of the preconditions that North Korea puts forth could be the withdrawal of U.S. troops from South Korea, but now President Moon is saying that's probably not the case. So.
Where the North Korea stands towards the status of the U.S. troops in the Korean Peninsula actually has been pretty mixed in the recent years. We know from the private meetings between Kim Jong-il and the current leader's father and the South Korean visitors 10 years ago, as well as the more recent meeting between Kim Jong-un, the high-level envoys from South Korea. We know that the North Korean leaders have been pretty okay about the presence of U.S. troops in the Korean Peninsula. But at the same time, we know that officially North Korea has used the presence of U.S. troops as a justification for developing nuclear weapons. So it's all in the North Korea's position in this regard is all over the map, so to speak. So to me, that indicates that North Korea doesn't really object to the presence of U.S. troops per se, but probably they object to the manner in which they are based here on an offensive position, for instance, or for example, what's really the presence of U.S. troops bring with them, such as the joint military exercises that South Korea and the United States conduct annually, as well as the idea of the extension of the nuclear umbrella to South Korea. And there are plenty of other deterrence measures that the U.S. offers to South Korea, which North Korea interpret to be hostile towards them. So I think North Korea would rather address these issues rather than the issue of the number of U.S. troops in the Korean Peninsula. So I think North Korea has shown that they can be flexible about this issue.
So going kind of back to the issue of denuclearization, we know the high-level talks were kind of scheduled for today, but it didn't happen, and it's probably going to happen sometime next week to set the, like you said, the agenda for the summit, but it hasn't been set yet officially. So what are your thoughts on that? Where would this go?
Well, even though nothing has been written on the stone when it comes to the inter-Korean summit agenda, we know that it's going to be more about affirmation of the positive developments that have taken so far this year. It's also going to be an affirmation of the agreement between the two Koreas about the future direction of the interkorean relations.
Right.
And also we expect North Korea to express something in regard to their stance towards denuclearization. So North Korea has two opportunities to describe what kind of negotiation position they're going to have before the US-DPRK summit. So one is the plenary session taking place today, and the second will be the inter-Korean summit. And I think North Korea will use these opportunities to crystallize what kind of positions they have.
All right. So over in the U.S., President Trump said Wednesday that the United States will do everything that it can to make this Trump-Kim summit a success. But he did give a stick with that carrot, saying that, but if he doesn't think this is going to bear fruit, he's going to walk away from the talks. So,
well, this combination of carrot and stick is definitely a classic Trump. He has said the same thing about multiple other issues. The war between Mexico and the United States, free trade agreements, NATO, so forth and so forth. So this is not surprising coming from him. But on the other hand, I think what Trump said, I mean, the first part being the positive disposition towards the summit, but then the second being the stick. I think this is, the second part is more of a message to the domestic audience in the United States.
Okay.
There's been some worry in the security establishment in the United States, as well as from the American society, that President Trump was actually falling for a trap, a North Korean trap, by agreeing to having this summit so soon, and before North Korea and the United States have settled down on the terms of negotiation. So I think President Trump is trying to indicate, or send a strong message to the critics of, himself, and also those people who are worried about the outcome of the summit, that he's aware of the downside risk of the summit, and then he's promising to everybody that he's going to be who he is, unpredictable, and then somebody who can always do a very surprise action.
So it seems that it's very unlikely that he will probably walk away from the summit that's already been.
Yeah, he's very much invested in the process, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your insight today.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks.